Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I have with me James McCauley. He is the founder of the Phoenix Breathwork Method. And I invited him on the podcast because I feel that breathwork is so powerful to support us in greater union within ourselves, as well as when we're in partnership. And so welcome, James. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd love if you could introduce yourself a bit more and share what brought you to the path of breathwork and to create this Phoenix Breathwork Method.
Okay, I'll try to do this. Hi, Nikki, and thanks for having me on the show. I'll try to do this without stepping onto too many cliches, right? But we'll start with a big one. I'm Irish and I drank too much. And when I say I drank too much, I drank way too much. So I had multiple accidents when I was a teenager. I flipped off a bridge in my local town. I burst my kidney. I was dragged home by my friends. Not left to die, just left to sleep, but it's close enough to being left to die. And basically that pattern continued from kind of when we discover Ireland, we discover alcohol at around 13. And to around 22, 23, this whole thing was being destroyed. And I was wild and out of control, having a lot of fun, but out of control. And then I had a vocal polyp on my vocal cords when I was living in Taiwan. And I was singing in a rock band. I was teaching kindergarten at the time. I was smoking, drinking, drug, sex, rock and roll, living the dream of every 22-year-old, to be quite honest. And then I had this operation of vocal polyps and I couldn't speak for 3 weeks. And that began it, which was terrifying. And then they gave me breath rehabilitation in Taiwan. Taiwanese government is amazing. And so after 8 weeks of these rehabilitation where they teach you to breathe through your diaphragm, a lot of the things that I kind of believed were baked into my identity went away. So I was anxious, I had eczema, I had a whole heap of conditions. They kind of went away. I ended up quitting alcohol, amazingly, after some NLP and hypnosis. And then I went down this route of what else is there you can do? If you can do that with your breath, what else can you do? I've traveled all around the place, lived in a bunch of countries. As we were just chatting, speak a bunch of languages. And now I'm running this company, Phoenix Breathwork Method, and I love it. I love it. It's almost like the reasons that forced me to drink, or that I believe I drank, like, small talk, bullshit, no real connection. I almost get to live on a bi-weekly basis in my trainings where people come in and say, all right, no more bullshit. I don't even want to know what your identity is at this point. For me, you're just a body in a room, and we're here to connect to ourselves and connect to the other bodies in the room. And it's beautiful. It's like, and then we run these big events, and it's the same thing. It's like, hey, no more blah, 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 blah. Let's just go deep together and see what comes out. So that's where I find myself, living in Barcelona and speaking to you right now in Ibiza, I just found out.
Yeah, so we're neighbors, and beautiful story. And yeah, so many things. I think it's awesome that, and I think this is common for a lot of people, when a very challenging moment can turn into your greatest blessing. So obviously that could create a lot of fear and, oh my gosh, you have this polyp, but it was the thing that allowed you to change your life into something deeper, more meaningful. Now you're helping other people in a bigger way, and beautiful. And so there's this saying that I've received before, which is the most powerful person in the room is the person with the deepest breath. And I would agree with this because our breath tends to follow our emotions, what we're feeling, right? If we're anxious, we have shallow breath. But if we're really centered and grounded, we're going to have deeper breath. And so what are your thoughts? And that relates to relationship, because obviously the function of relationship is to have fun and all these things and to trigger us into our greatness. And so
I
So,
love the way you say obviously. The obvious bit there is like, and obviously relationships are designed to trigger. I'm not disagreeing at all, but to trigger us into our greatness is a great phrase. I'm just not sure it's completely obvious to the average person. But if I said to my mom, "Hi, mom, I met this girl. We're in love. Yeah, what's going on?" Well, the job here is to trigger ourselves into greatness. My mom would be like, "Good luck with that, James."
well, I feel like that's what divine union does essentially. So there's different kinds of relationships. There's like the masses are having this kind of relationship. But then there are those that are using, and how I define divine union in the past episodes have been about, where we can use relationship as a technology for our greatest becoming. Because some of the things that we would see only in the container of that relationship only come up in that space. And so you could think you're all enlightened being single, but then the moment you enter into a relationship, but not just a regular one, I'm talking about one that's a divine union level one, the point is to support us in our greatest becoming.
Great. That was a really nice explanation. I can see you've done this. You've done this before, because that last one, a technology to help us grow into our greatness, that was beautiful. And I agree. I think looking back on the relationships I've had, I would be 1/5 of the man I am now, whatever percentage that is, if it weren't for those relationships and oftentimes painful lessons that you learn through them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And they are painful, and they can be painful, especially if we have these patterns that we might not want to look at. And just like, let's say you have the polyp in your throat, it's like, okay, this thing is making me look at myself, at my life to change something. Right? Usually, and unfortunately, most humans learn through pain. I believe we're shifting into the new paradigm, whereas we can learn through pleasure as well. And what decides that is how self aware we are and how readily we're willing to shift, change, evolve, grow. Not because there's something wrong with us, but we know that it's not even our best self. However, we're behaving or acting or experiencing relationship, it's not even who we are at our greatest. And yeah, that's why I really love relationships. That's why I love talking about divine union and everything that supports it, and really wanting people to step into these higher level of spiritual relationships, which can still be fun. And all the things.
I love that. I love that. I love it. That's important. That's an important point, right? Because, and I mentioned this before we were talking, is like the wellness world suffers under the weight of its own self-importance, right? And I feel it's something you see in breathwork, and I've been there as well, playing the guru, floating around, dressing in a certain way, and the spiritual relationships as well. If you go to your average retreat, I have, some sort of tantric relationship retreat, you can be guaranteed everyone's going to be dressed all in white, as if that's fundamental part of this spiritual. If you're in a spiritual relationship, you have to wear linen. That's for sure. I think that's something before I got into, well, I've been in breathwork obviously for years now because my own process, right? And I've been in education for years and entertainment, which is a great combination. And one of the reasons that I didn't step into it before was this kind of, yeah, but I'm not that typical guru guy who's like all calm and mysterious and saying spiritual things and walking around dressed like a shaman. I mean, I did used to have dressed like a shaman. Who hasn't? But it hasn't been a kind of a long-term thing. And I think it's intimidating to a lot of people when they come across someone sitting or surrounded by all their bowls and their candles and all this. Still, probably in many cases, completely messed up on many different levels, but presenting themselves as if they've somehow figured it all out. And the people come into that space then feeling very intimidated by that. It's something I noticed in my workshop, in my training. So in my trainings, I used to have, they come in and I'd ask, hey, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you change about yourself or your life? And you're trying to look for some dark stuff, right? To get some vulnerability, to share that. And then I would ask, give me a sentence about yourself or two about why you came to this training. I've taken out the whole give me a sentence or two about yourself, because in a group scenario, people will just kind of use this as an opportunity to just, because they feel insecure, to go, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd like my business to be even more successful because I'm a very important, more or less, I'm a really important therapist with a lot of experience behind me and blah, blah, blah. And then the next person beside them is sitting there going, oh my God, this person is so enlightened and I'm just a piece of crap. And I think it's really important that we present our humanness, not humanity, like our humanness to the people that we're working about. And you can call it almost like strategic vulnerability, where you say, hey, I did this. And they go, oh, good, because I didn't even read your book, James. I didn't even read your book. And then you create this bonding, right? And I think that's very important, in the wellness world, and also in relationships as well, as that you are able to share, you want to call it your shadows or your darker bits or your foibles or your weirdness, genuinely and openly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like shadow work is so beautifully explored through breath work because it goes a lot into our unconscious and the parts of ourselves that maybe we don't want to look at. And because it really takes us out of the mind and into the body, a lot of times the shadow is hiding out in the places where we have the somatic trauma, right? From childhood, from past relationships, from past lives, and stuff we inherited from our family line. So there's so much to continue to excavate and heal. And really, it's just about reintegrating those parts, like loving those parts too that we've been shaming and rejecting. Like, oh no, I can't show that part of myself. Like, I know one of my shadows, I'll do the vulnerability piece first. I know one of my shadows, for example, is I can be really direct and like tongue lashing with my communication. And there's always gift in shadow, right? Like with that shadow, I mean, I get shit done. But when it
Oh, we
comes,
can swear. Brilliant. Oh, I've been cutting my leg.
I don't usually, you just brought it out of me with your rock and
I,
roll.
I didn't swear. I deliberately did not swear. I was like, but you swore, so now get ready. Sorry.
So yeah, so I find that breath work is really powerful for that because it like shakes things up and it helps us to access places that we would never access with the mind. Like we don't want to consciously go there,
We
but
can't.
yeah, well that too. Because there's so many protection mechanisms in place, so we don't have to break down or feel so much shame and guilt or embarrassment or whatever. And so, if you want to talk a bit about, because I really love breath work, I actually don't do it enough. I definitely should do it more, but I always feel so good and so much lighter after breath work. So, there are people who know about breath work and have done it, and I believe most of our listeners will have. But even sometimes people who've done it, like, what is the how? Like, how does it work? Why, in your years of, obviously we can just say, shut up and just do it. But I do find that when people understand a bit more about how things work, it actually makes the session more powerful as well.
Yeah. So this is something I explain to when I train breathwork facilitators. And when I'm explaining with any kind of physiological or scientific phenomenon, there's multiple pathways going on with that, right? And I always say to them, you just need one, guys. You just need one answer so the person who asks you says, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, right? And that's really important for that sense of safety. And one thing I will talk about, a lot of my work is based around the polyvagal theory, which is the idea that in order we need to create safety and that our systems react to threats in different ways, fight, flight, fawn responses. Freeze, thank you very much, and freeze. And so in breathwork, when I'm running these trainings, I'm always saying, okay, there are 3 C's. Context is why we're doing what we're doing, what are we doing, and how we're doing it. Connection, connecting to yourself and to other people, connection to the space around you, connection to a higher purpose or value, and then choice, which is really important. And those are the 3 C's, right? So if you're going to do any sort of intervention, say, hey, today we're going to do this. And why are we doing it? Because of this. And how we're going to do it is this way. Okay, now connect to yourself, connect your body, connect your breath. Okay, and remember, you can do this in many different ways. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And those 3 C's create this feeling of safety, which a lot of people don't have ready access to a sense of safety in their body, in their mind, or elsewhere. In terms of what is breathwork, this is complex. I'm going to simplify it a little bit. There are 2 types of breathwork. So some people, when they think of breathwork, probably maybe for the last 10 years in the Western world, we think of functional breathwork, nasal breathing, yogic breathing, ujjayi, box breathing. Everything is that's designed to bring stability to the body, light, slow, deep breathing, primarily through the nose. Generally, the idea is to improve your respiratory efficiency and increase your tolerance to CO2. So the slower you breathe, the lighter you breathe, and the deeper you breathe, the more CO2 your body is able to hold in your body. And CO2 takes the oxygen from your blood and puts it into your body. So you can think of CO2 as like the taxi that takes the oxygen from the blood and transports it where it needs to go. So if you're breathing, over breathing, which a lot of us do, like this, breathing, you are lowering your CO2, which means oxygen isn't getting to your body, and which creates a sense of anxiety. And this creates an anxious loop because you feel like you're not getting oxygenated, so you start breathing more like this, like when I was an asthmatic. And this creates, it kind of makes it worse, a vicious cycle. So what you're trying to do with functional breathwork is to retrain somebody to be light, slow, and deep so their body learns to relax and CO2 increases. That's yoga, that's box breathing, that's like free diving, all these practices. What people now think of as breathwork is conscious connected breathwork. What you see maybe in more of my videos of people with emotional releases, people wearing blindfolds and masks on, screaming, crying, rolling around. That's the exact opposite of functional breathwork. So this is light, slow, and deep breathing through your nose. In this one, you're using big belly breaths, breathing through your mouth, and you're deliberately trying to breathe as much as possible so that you lower the level of CO2 in your body. This changes the pH level of your blood. A lot of hormones are released into your system, and you start to disactivate the default mode network, or what we call the my fault network, and more blood flow goes into the limbic system, and you access your body and emotional world. So there are two very different aims and outcomes, but they're both incredibly powerful. I would say this one, functional breathwork, is more important than this as a starting point because, okay, you have an emotional breakthrough and you go into altered state of consciousness, and then you go back to your completely crippled nervous system that is incapable of processing anything, that is constantly in a state of anxiety. And so I start, when my trainings, I teach both, but I always start with this as a foundation.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. A plus.
I will add something very important that you mentioned there as well.
What?
Somatic. The word somatic. When you talk about working with the body, right? We're talking about breathing. We're using breath to access energies, however you want to express that, that's fine. To access your body, to explore your body, to be more curious about it. You use this breath, it's the driver, it shuts down your prefrontal cortex to a degree, activates the limbic system, and you start feeling something in your body. Having somebody there with you, and for me, it's very important that they have their hands on you, is important because a breath work in this case is donating their nervous system to you. They're giving you the energy to process things that you wouldn't be able to do on your own. That's one of the advantages of co-regulation, right? So even you'll see a lot of times just someone with their hand on a chest or holding somewhere, just saying, hey, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. In my style of breath work, it's more, I'm going to use the word aggressive. So there are two types of touch. This is I'm helping you just know you're there, you're safe. The other type of touch is where you work through the body, pressing in distinct parts of the body in very intense ways, because that forces the person to breathe more. And oftentimes you can think of it like a body bears a score type of stuff, right? Where emotions or experiences or certain even muscular patterns are trapped in that. The person can only access these sensations when they start to breathe because they've numbed themselves to these, like most of us are numb as hell. And so your job as a facilitator is to hold the space for them and then almost to provoke them to have to breathe through it. And as you press on certain parts of the body, you'll see the emotions, which is fascinating, flicker. You know, different parts of the body, they store it, so there'll be some fear and some guilt, and you work this energy up through the body, and then oftentimes it'll come out in like almost like an exorcism, right? Where you're holding them. I tend to have them almost in this sort of surrender position, and that energy comes up through them. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. And you touched on a few pieces that I want to share about as it relates to divine union, one of them being the co-regulation of the nervous system. So it's like what I talked about, where the most powerful person in the room, being the person with the deepest breath, is generally the person that's the most regulated, with the most regulated nervous system. So ideally, when we're in partnership or even any kind of relationship, friendship, and someone gets triggered, ideally we don't get triggered back. Ideally, we want to do exactly what you said, like it's okay, offer support, kind touch. that stable presence to help bring the person back, and just taking a few deep breaths ourselves. Like if I see someone's triggered and I just take a deep breath, because we're social mammals, they'll take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Right. And then similarly, if I'm the one that's triggered, the reason why we have our meditation practice and the first form of the breath work, like the box breathing or the Ujjayi breathing, is because we can snap ourselves out of a trigger using those regulating breath works. So the more that we have our own personal practice with breath work, the better we are in relationship, the better spaciousness. It's like we receive an extra lung and we receive more patience. So something that would normally trigger us, we can catch ourselves, and maybe we feel the trigger in the body, but we don't lash out and react. We take a moment to respond. And so one of the public service announcements of this particular episode is begin a breathwork practice every day, like the first type that you talked about, which
functional breath work.
Yeah, functional one, because it's functional in your relationship. You will become less triggered. And then when you get triggered, you can help to regulate yourself. And when someone else is triggered, meaning your partner in relationship or someone you're dating or whatever, you can be the one to bring them back into regulation. And that's really part of, okay, maybe what I did triggered that person, but then I can also be the support to bring them back. Center. And then secondly, in relationship to divine union, what you were talking about, we all have to do shadow work to have amazing relationships, because every time we get triggered, it's just a projection. It's just something within ourselves that's wanting to be healed, that this person that triggered you helped to illuminate it within you, but it's for you. It's not like they're malicious and they're trying to hurt you, because someone else who doesn't have that wound is not going to get triggered. So we can proactively do the second type of breath work. Like you can go fishing for which I love to do, by the way.
You should say it. You love to go fishing.
I love to go fishing for what shadows, what things, because I know I'm even lighter, even brighter, even more radiant, even more after when I go and excavate those parts and clear those trapped emotions with which that second kind of breath work helps with. What do you call that one again?
Conscious connected breath work.
Conscious connected breath work. I love, because it's like, wow, I feel really good, which means I have a higher capacity, especially if I'm good. I'm like, oh, what do I need to heal next? Then it's like, let me go searching, because then I have more space. I have more of a reserve, a capacity to be able to go deeper. And that's why I always say that healing's like a spiral, because as we heal more things, we can actually go deeper and heal the more challenging and painful things.
Okay, there's loads I could touch upon there. I'm going to touch on the last point first, and then I'll move back. This is very interesting, because you often come across people, particularly in the wellness world, who are like, I think, why is it every time I heal myself, then I think I'm completely healed, then I find an even bigger lump of shit underneath it all. You're like, yeah, because now, just to touch on your point there, it's like, yeah, because now you have the capacity to look deeper into the darker parts of you, and you're going to find bigger, darker monsters down there. That's what that is. And it is something I encourage, what you mentioned, to go fishing. I would call courageous curiosity. It's like, hey guys, I can't tell you what you're going to find. We're creating a platform here, a space for you to go and explore. And you don't have to do anything. You can lie there and just listen to my voice and go, wish this guy would shut up. Or you can take this opportunity to breathe, come across, maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be bad, maybe you won't even know what it is, and go, what's that? And then even if you get a little bit scared, just get a little bit closer to it and have a look at it and feel it. I think that's very important. So it's nice. On the other point you mentioned at the very start, we in breathwork use this idea of a window of tolerance, right? So some people will be hyper aroused, fight and flight. Men tend to be more like this. And then you have hypo arousal, which is the freeze and the fawn response, right? And we have this window of tolerance within both of those, where we're calm, regulated, connected, making reasonably good decisions, thinking reasonably nice things about people. And then when we get overstimulated, when we might fall down into our numbing sensation, or we might go into this kind of more agitated sympathetic response. With breath work, it has two major things that it does. One is you use breathwork to recognize the signals in your body to understand where you are. It's like, okay, to read the signals early before it gets into your mind and you say, I'm stressed, you go, okay, these are the signals in my body. That must mean this. Oh, I'll use the down regulating breathwork. I'll use some somatic release breathwork to get me back into that. And over time, this increased sensitivity in these breathwork tools, they actually expand your window of tolerance. And this is what so it's like, first you're just figuring out, oh, I'm up here, let's get back down here. Oh, look, I fell down here, I know how to get back here. And you get more and more sensitive, so you know when that's happening. But over time, what we call in breathwork is exploring your edges. That the more you explore, the more under different conditions, you find that you're still regulated in that flow state. And we call this interoception and self-regulation, right? This idea of feeling inside your body and learning to understand where you are and go, okay, I'll use this technique here. What you're talking about is the bit emotional fluidity, I call it, is where you're exploring and navigating and processing emotions and other parts of yourself. And there's a lot of scientific research around that. One of the problems, I would say, is that it's the functional stuff, like the yoga stuff. Everyone that teaches functional breathwork is boring as shit. I don't know why. They're just boring. Like, oh no, you breathe like this and then you will be regulated all the time. Yeah, super regulated. Good. You're like, don't want to be that guy. And the ones who are teaching the emotional fluidity, they all dress like shamans and talk in vague terms that no one can really grasp and talk about connection to the heavens. And so they're two different worlds that are inaccessible to different types of people, because the normies aren't going to do this, and the hippies aren't going to do that. One of the things I try to do, at least, is to bring those two things together. And the reason I present it all in scientific terms is not because the other ways of interpreting aren't valid. It just simplifies the discourse. You say, here, guys, I'm not saying anything isn't true. Anything is. I'm going to present what is clinically definitely true, and you can sprinkle in your magic as you see fit.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. So I feel that we covered so much, and ultimately, as a human being, you will become a better human being if you do your breath work, whether it's the conscious connected kind, or functional. So it is a must to add to our self-care for someone who's and I feel like that's my audience, is people who are on a personal development journey. They're into self-help. They, want to evolve and become their best selves. And they know that they have the power to do that within themselves. And instead of being a victim to life, taking life by the hands and deciding like, I am the creator of it. So this will only support you. And then I feel like in relationship, I think of like past relationships, and it's like, if we would have just did more breath work and did more breathing together, which there's so many kinds you can do together also in partnership. And that's a lot of tantric breath work, for example, like how much better it would have been, right? Like how many less challenging, triggering moments there would have been. And so do your breath work, everyone. Get it.
Okay, I will make a couple of important points, given that we're talking about the importance of relationships. So men and women are different, right? And particularly in the style of breathworks and what they need, they're also different. So for example, a man in general needs a softening style of breath to take him out of his mind and drop him into his body and attune him more emotionally. And so this would be, the two basic ones would be longer exhales and box breathing, so he's centered. A woman in general needs a more, what I would call, grounding and expanding into safety. And this is more of a somatic style. So it can be even something simple. I would use an exaggerated physiological sigh, which would be someone breathing through your nose, and another one at the top, and then letting it all go through the mouth, but also making noise and moving. It's like, oh, I mean, I love it. Oh. And so for a woman, that style of somatic grounding and expanding is better. Men just need to get out of their minds, and that's the slow exhale. So one of the things I do with my male clients, as you know, men struggle to navigate emotions a little bit more than women, right? But men are great at interoception. So I'll trick them a little bit, and I'll say, okay, I want you to sit there, we're going to do a body scan. Okay, and as you scan down over your body, I want you to tell me the sensations you feel in your body. And they go, okay, scanning down. Okay, scan over your head. Okay, my jaw is tight. Okay, now scanning it over your chest. Okay, feel my heart is beating quite fast. Okay, in your stomach. And there's some sort of butterflies in my stomach down to the legs. And you go, okay, now I have a question for you. If somebody else was feeling these sensations, what emotion might they be feeling? And then the man would go, anxiety. And then you go, okay, is it possible that you are feeling that emotion? And then they go, motherfucker. You just Jedi'd me into that, right? Because a man can do the whole interoception thing, but labeling the emotions is difficult for him. So you're taking the things that a man is very good at, interoception and rational objective analysis of what that might be, and then feeding it back to him in a way that he will reluctantly and grudgingly have to accept.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much. You've been so generous. And I know you're going to guide us inside the bonus content in a beautiful breath work as well. But before we go into the bonus content, I invite you to share with people where they can find you, any other information you want to share with people. And we'll also include your links, of course, in the comment, in the bio section.
Yeah, so you can find me at phoenixbreathworkmethod.com or Phoenix Breathwork Method on Instagram. And we run a lot of international trainings in Dublin, London. There's one coming up in Amsterdam, intensive weekend trainings, and we do online courses to become breathwork facilitators. And I love it. Thank you very much. I'm living in Barcelona again. So happy to be back. I've been touring for like 9 months, so I'm back in Barcelona at home. Very happy.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, James, and we'll see you all inside the bonus content. Thank you for being here, and bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.